Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem, welcome back to today's Daf, which is Eruvin Peches. We are 6 lines from the top of the Amud, Amar Rabba Bar Rav Huna. Getting back to the halacha mentioned in the Mishnah, if we have a balcony extending over a body of water, in order to draw water from that body of water, which is a karmelis, up to the balcony, which is a Rish Sayachid, almost construct a mechitza of 10 tfachim high around the opening on the balcony, so that those mechitzas appear as though they're extending downwards to the water, and allows you to draw water from the area beneath those mechitzas, which are not considered like a Rish Sayachid. You can draw from there up to the balcony, which is too a Rish Sayachid. Says the Gemara, Amar Rabba Bar Rav Huna lo yishano, that allowance of creating this suspended mechitza was only said ela lamales, to allow drawing water from the body of water down below up to the balcony. Aval lishpoich asa, but to spill wastewater through the opening of the balcony down to the river, that you can't do. Why? Let's see Rashi inside. 4 lines from the top. It says Rashi lo yishanu shemechitza tluya materes bigzusser l'rabbanon. The Rabban only allowed this suspended mechitza on this balcony, only to allow drawing water. Aval lishpoich sheivchen, to spill wastewater benekev through the opening l'mayim down to the river below asur. Yeah, you can't do. Why? Because inevitably this river is going to drive the water out, out past the mechitza of this balcony. So inevitably the water which is going to spill down is going to actually be driven out of these mechitzas and out into the karmelis. So though it's an indirect transfer from the shtiach to the karmelis, it's also. Says the Gemara, really? Maskefalo Rav Shezi. Rav Shezi asked the kasha, how can you say it's also? V'chima bein ze l'uka. Why would this be different than the case in the Mishnah, in the upcoming Mishnah, which tells us that a person may not pour his personal water into the chatzar unless there's an uka. So an uka is a pit, an in-ground pool, which was constructed for drainage purposes. So if you have this small size chatzar, you can't pour your personal water used for washing, for dishes, in the chatzar, because it appears as though he's sending it out to the Rishus Harabim. Although it's an indirect transfer, it's asur b'drabbanan, for it might lead a person to actually transfer directly to Rishus Harabim. So the only way you can do that is if you have an uka, this pit in your chatzar, which can theoretically contain the amount of water that a person uses per day, which the Gemara soon will estimate as 2 sa'ah of water, which is the estimate average amount of water that a person, personal wastewater, used for washing, for dishes, is needed per day. So since you have that uka, then it sends that message. Look, you really want the water to stay in the chatzar, because this uka can contain the full amount of the person's daily usage. So in that case, you're allowed to pour in the chatzar, and it doesn't appear like you're sending it out to Rishus Harabim. That's going to be in the Mishnah upcoming soon. Now, we learn as well that even if that uka happens to be filled with water to the brim, in which case when a person pours water into the chatzar, it's going to overflow in Rishus Harabim, that's mutter. And the reason there is because since potentially it can contain a person's full daily amount of water, then it appears like a drain, and it appears like he doesn't really want to send it out to Rishus Harabim. So once that appearance factor is there, that's okay. Because again, the point is, only min Torah, it's only asur to send directly to Rishus Harabim. Midrabbanan, even indirectly, is asur, for it might lead a person to do it directly. But if he has no intent of doing so, look, he has a drain where he'd like his water to end up, although actually it's not ending up there, it's fine. Because as long as there's that indication, as that message is there, that will prevent a person from actually doing it directly to Rishus Harabim. So that's the Mishnah down on the Amud here. Says Rav Shezvi, just as in that case, you can pour water into the chatzar, even though you know that the fact is the water is going to be driven out to Shusarab, that's okay, as long as you have that uka, which demonstrates that, look, the water is really not meant to go to Shusarab. So even though practically speaking, it's being driven by force, by the force of the pouring into Shusarab, that's okay. So why would it be usher in our case? Why do you say that he can't pour through the opening of the balcony down to the river? Because the force of the pouring will drive it out beyond the mechitzas. It's an indirect act. It's not what he has in mind. So therefore it shouldn't even be usher midrabanan. Again says the Gemara, why would this be usher? Why would this be different than the uka in the upcoming Mishnah, where although practically the water is being driven out, it's mutter, because that's not what he has in mind. It says Mahani Taimi. In the case of the uka, this drain is meant to contain the water. It's meant to be absorbed in that pit. So when he pours it there, that's what he has in mind. Although practically it so happens that this time it's not happening, that's fine. As long as he has that indicator, he demonstrates that, look, I'm not trying to send it to Shusarab. So that mitigates the concern. However, v'hani lo taimi, in our case where there's no pit there to contain the water, when he pours it through the balcony, it's going directly into the river below and being driven by force out from beneath those mechitzas. In this case, he knows there's no chance, never a chance, of the water remaining within the confines of the mechitzas, as opposed to the case of the pit where many times it remains there, it gets absorbed there. So even though sometimes it doesn't, that's fine. That's not what he has in mind. But in our case, it's inevitable. When you pour into a river, it keeps on going. So it appears like you're just sending it out. And next time, you might actually send it directly to the Carmelis. Pour it directly into the Carmelis. So that's the difference. Hani taimi, in the case of the pit, it's meant to be absorbed. Hani lo taimi, in our case, it's not. And therefore, the Chacham made an isser. They didn't allow it to be done even indirectly, for concern that next time, a person might directly pour into the Carmelis. So according to this version, only drawing from beneath those mechitzas is mutar, but not pouring into the river. Iked de Amri Omar Rabba Baravo. There's another version of Rabba Baravo. Lo yitema lemales hu deshari. Don't think only filling, drawing water from what's in the confines of the mechitzas up to the balcony is mutar. Lishpeich aser, but to pour is aser because we're concerned about the water flowing into the river. Ela lishpeich namishari. Even pouring is mutar. Why? Because he really has no intention of having the water flow into the river. For all he cares, it stays right there. This is in contrast to the chutzner, where Rashi explains he really would like the water to leave his chutzner. He doesn't want a muddied courtyard. So in that case, we need to have an uka, which indicates that he has a place for the water to be absorbed, and he really, that's what he has in mind when he pours, that it gets absorbed in its place. So only by a chutzner do we have that issue. But when it comes to a river, he really has no intent on having this water being driven out to the river. Therefore, even pouring water through the mechitza is allowed, even though he knows inevitably it's going to be driven by force out into the Carmelis. That's okay. That's not what he had in mind. And it's not even asr midrabanan. Amar Rav Shezvi. So according to this approach, that pouring is mutter, Rav Shezvi responded, Pshita, of course. What's the chiddush? Hainu uka. Isn't this the exact case of the uka? Meaning, just as in that case you're allowed to, because you have the indicator there, you have the drainage system. So that indicates that that's not what his intent is. He doesn't care about the water going to Sarab, therefore it's mutter. So in our case as well, why would I think it's any different? Since his kavanah is not to spill it out into the river, rather into the area directly below the mechitzas. So why would I differentiate? What's the chiddush here? Says the Gemara, there is a chiddush. How the time, perhaps I would think, hani taimi. In the case of the uka, since you have that physical container there, you have that pool, which is a drainage system, where the water is meant to be absorbed, so that's a true indicator of a lack of intent to have his water flow into the sarab, and therefore it's mutter. V'hani lo taimi, but in our case where there's nothing withholding the flow, he knows it's inevitable. When you pour into the river, it's going to just keep on going into the Carmelis. Perhaps in this case, it would be also for concern that, although this in this case he has no intent, but perhaps next time he's going to pour directly into the Karmelis. Kamash Malon, the Chiddush here is that there's no such concern, and the point is because he really has no intent on having this water flow into the Karmelis. And once again, the point is that only direct pouring is Asr. Is the Isser Mamish is only direct pouring. Indirect Isser is only on account of concern that it might lead a person to pour directly. But if he really has no kavana, no machshava, no intent to transfer this water over to the Karmelis or over to Sarabim, in that case, there's no Isser, even midrabanan. So in short, drawing from beneath those mechitzas all agrees mutter. Pouring water through the balcony down to the river below depends on the two versions. According to the first version, it is Asr. According to the second, it is mutter. Continues the Gemara, V'chein shteg zustrois zu l'malam azu. Mishnah described a case where you had two balconies extending over a river on different levels, one higher than the other. And the Mishnah told us that the upper balcony constructed a mechitza around their drawing hole, around their opening, and the lower balcony actually makes use of the upper balcony. They toss their pail up through their hole down to the river. What happens? Shtei nasuris. They both can't use it because it's jointly used by two people. It needs to have an eruv. Amar Rav Huna Marav lo yishanu. This is only a concern ela b'smucha. When they're close to each other, avu mufleges. But if they're misaligned, so they're on two levels, right? But how aligned are they horizontally? If they're within 4 tefachim, then it's considered to be accessible to the lower balcony as well. But if it's misaligned 4 tefachim or more, then the only way the fellow on the lower balcony accesses the upper balcony is by tossing his pail out 4 tefachim via the airspace. That's not considered to be properly accessible, and he doesn't interfere, and he will not necessitate an eruv for the member of the upper balcony. Aval b'mefleges, if they're far apart, el yoina muteris, the upper balcony has exclusive usage rights, does not need an eruv. For Rav Latamei, Rav follows his shita elsewhere. Rav said, Ein adam oiser al chaver derech aver. If a person merely accesses his friend's property via airspace, it's not considered to be a proper use, and he does not interfere. Continues the Gemara. Amar Rabba, Amar B'chia. So Rabba said, name Rav B'chia. Rav Yosef, Amar Rav Yoshe. And Rav Yosef said the same thing in the name of Rav Yoshe, as follows. Yesh gezel b'Shabbos. If a person happens to use his friend's property, it's unauthorized use, not meant to be using it, but let's say it's something where his friend doesn't really frequent that area. It's a collapsed home. It's a churva. So happens that this fellow makes use of that property. Perhaps it's improper, but he does it anyways. Yesh gezel b'Shabbos. The fact that he has gezel, that he uses it as a gazlan. So on Shabbos, he's considered to be the primary user. So although he's not allowed to use it, really, it's not his. But pertaining to halachos of Shabbos, we consider this fellow as the primary user because it's not an area that his friend really uses. And he, the person who actually uses it, even though it's unauthorized use, he's considered to be the primary user, and no eruv is required. So that's the first portion of the sentence here. The second part of the halacha was v'churva machzer lebalim. A ruins, this type of place which is not really used by its rightful owner, machzer lebalim, brings back to the owner, reverts back to its owner. Says, well, 1 second. Hoguf kasha. This statement inherently is difficult. First you say, Amris is gezel b'Shabbos. The concept of a gezel is applied by Shabbos. Alma kanya. Apparently the person who actually uses it acquires possession of it, meaning he's considered to be the primary user and no eruv is required. So that's the first part of your halacha. But then you said, v'churba machzer lebalim. The churva reverts back to the owner. Alma loikanya. Apparently the person who actually uses it illegally doesn't really acquire possession. He's not koina. And we view it as though the rightful owner actually resides and uses this area. And this fellow who illegally is using this property can't use it without an eruv. So the statement here seems to be inherently a contradiction. This is what he meant to say. Yesh din gezel b'Shabbos. That the din of gezel, you're not allowed to use. You have to return it. That applies to Shabbos as well. Ketzad, meaning the churva machzal ba'alim. The churva reverts back to the ba'alim, meaning although you're using it the entire week, it doesn't justify it. Doesn't make it your makim dira. The rightful owner assumes control of it. It goes back, it reverts back to its owner, and you can't use it without an erev. Amar Rabba, umoisvina shmaita. Says Rabba, we actually have a kasha on our halacha from the Mishnah. V'chein shtei gzus trois, zu l'mala mazu. So these two balconies, and the upper one has the opening with the mechitza, through which the fellow in the lower balcony lowers his pail, and it seems to be unauthorized use. Nevertheless, the Mishnah tells us, he interferes. That necessitates an erev. Now, if you maintain that the concept of gezel applies on Shabbos, meaning the fact that you're stealing, you're doing it without permission, it's not justified. It doesn't make it yours. You're not reckoned as the user here. If that's the case, Amaya Suris. So why are they also to use the top area? Meaning the fact that the fellow in the lower balcony actually makes unauthorized use of the upper fellow's mechitza. Why would he interfere? He's not part of the equation. He's coming unlawfully. Amar Rav Sheishes, you know what we're speaking about? They actually contributed. They both contributed to building on this mechitza. So it's authorized access. The fellow from the lower balcony has allowance, has permission to use the upper balcony. That's why he interferes. If that's the case, why does the Mishnah say if they made a mechitza on the upper balcony, then they're both us? But if they would have made a mechitza on the lower balcony as well, then it would be okay. Why would it be okay if the fellow from the lower balcony actually has joint ownership of the upper balcony's mechitza? Then even if he has his own personal mechitza, but he still has access to the upper mechitza as well. Why would no erev be required in this case? Says the Gemara, no, keep in the asal tachtoina. Because once they made a mechitza for the bottom balcony, guli guli daite, they've demonstrated their intent. I don't want to use your mechitza. Why did I make my own personal mechitza down below? So although during the weekdays apparently they would perhaps use the upper balcony for some reason. Look, they jointly constructed it. It belongs to both of them. But the fact that he went ahead and made his own mechitza down below, what is the member of the lower balcony saying to the other fellow? He's saying, look, I'm not going to use your mechitza on Shabbos. That's why I made my own mechitza, which is specific for Shabbos use, right? That indicates that I'm not having a part in your mechitza on Shabbos. And that explains why. In this case, where the fellow of the lower balcony made his own mechitza, they've separated their Shabbos use from each other, and they can both use their respective mechitzas without interference, without a need for an erev. So in summary, we have a case of the two gets destroyed, two balconies. The Mishnah tells us if they made a mechitza for the upper balcony, they're both asa, because they both have access. Provided, says the Gemara, there are three elements here. Number one, they jointly constructed that upper mechitza. Otherwise, the fellow on the lower balcony has no real access there. We're speaking where the lower balcony had not constructed his own personal mechitza. Otherwise, he's considered to be a separate user. And as well, Rav tells us that that's only when it's within 4 tefachim. They're aligned horizontally within 4 tefachim to each other, because otherwise, the lower balcony wouldn't interfere, since his access to the upper balcony is only derech ave via airspace, which is not considered to be proper access. Continues the Mishnah. So now we're going to see that halacha that we mentioned earlier regarding the allowance to pour wastewater in the chutzner when it has the uka, this in-ground pool, this drain to contain a person's wastewater. Chutzner she'pchus marba amis. If we have this small size chutzner, less than 4 amis in size, ein shoifchem b'soicha mayim b'Shabbos. One may not pour water into this chutzner on Shabbos, because since it's so small in size, it appears like it's being poured straight into Rishus Harabim, and this might lead a person to actually pour directly into Rishus Harabim, which is a melachim and a Torah. So you can't do so. Ella imkain asala uka. Unless you constructed this in-ground drain, machzekes asayim, which can contain 2 sa volume of liquid, from the intake point of this pool down to the bottom, meaning it has to actually contain 2 sa of water. Where are you going to construct it? Bein bachutz, whether right outside the boundary of the chutzner, adjacent to the chutzner. Bein b'bifnim, whether actually inside the chutzner. Ella shem bachutz tzarich likmar. If you construct it right outside, then you have to actually cover it, because it's in Rishus Ram. So if it's covered, then it's a makam tur, which would allow the water to fall into it into a makam tur. Mibifnim, but if it's in the chutzner, ain't tzarich likmar. In that case, you don't have to cover it. There's no need to cover it. So this is the first halacha of the Mishnah. If it's a small size chutzner, what's considered to be a small size chutzner, less than 4 ames, then we require an uka to allow pouring wastewater into the chutzner. How large is the uka? It has to potentially contain 2 sa. It can be either inside the chutzner or right outside. And the point is to send that message, to provide that indicator that we're not pouring outside, we're pouring into the drain. This will prevent a person from mistakenly pouring straight into Rishus Ram. Continues the Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, biv. If we have this pipe, this trench, running from the chutzner to Rishus Ram. So this drainage pipe, shu kamar arba amas b'Rishus Ram, which is partially covered, the first section of that pipe. So the pipe is going from the chutzner into the Rishus Ram. So the first section of that pipe, which begins right at the Rishus Rabim, is covered. The first 4 amma section is covered, which makes it into a makam tur, which allows you to pour into that drain. One is allowed to pour water directly into this pipe, because 4 amas is enough space to allow a person's personal water, the personal usage, daily water usage, to be absorbed properly before it gets into Rishus Rabim. 4 amas is enough space for that. So the fact that he's pouring directly into the drain is irrelevant, because he has enough room there to get absorbed before it gets to Rishus Rabim. So it doesn't appear at all like he's pouring something into Rishus Rabim. That's Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov Shita. The Chacham, they say like this: Afilu gag eichotzer mei amma. Even if this trench, this pipe, begins way back inside this huge chutzner, 100 amas in size, a chutzner or a rooftop, which is 100 amas in size, and it has a trench running through it. One should never pour directly into the opening of the trench. You know why? Because it appears like he's actually pouring it into the Rishus Rabim. So this could lead a person to pour directly into Rishus Rabim. So directly into the pipe, don't pour. Indirectly you can. You can pour onto the roof, and allow the water to trickle into the pipe. So regarding a trench, this drainage pipe, according to Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov, as long as there's a sufficient surface there, which allows for absorption of a person's typical water usage per day, which is 2 sa, the Gemara is going to say, then you can go pour even into the trench. And as he said, we're speaking that the first portion of the pipe, which is in Rishus Rabim, is covered, so it's a makam tur, as long as there's enough space there for the water to get absorbed before it reaches the open air Rishus Rabim, then you're okay. According to the Chachamim, not even in this case can't you, but even if it begins way back in the chutzner or on the roof, you can never pour directly into this pipe, because it appears like it's going straight into Rishus Rabim, and this may lead a person to mistakenly pour into Rishus Rabim directly. Rather, pour it on the roof or on the chutzner and have it trickle into this pipe. Concludes the Mishnah. So we spoke about the chutzner, which is smaller in size than 4 amas, which requires the uka. But if the chutzner is 4 amas in size, then it's okay, because that's enough space to allow the water to be absorbed. Now, let's say the chutzner itself is not 4 amas, but it has an achsadra, this terrace, this roof, outdoor roofed area, which is adjacent to the chutzner. So the chatzar and the chsada together can combine to create the 4 amma user area, which removes the need for the uka. That's enough space to have the water absorbed before it reaches Rishus Harabim. Likewise, if you have 2 balconies leaning over the chatzar, so you have upper floors and you have balconies. You have one balcony leading over the chatzar, and opposite that another balcony. And this chatzar is small in size, less than 4 amas. And what happened? Members of this house made a pit near their house to allow spilling out their wastewater. However, the members on the other side did not construct this in-ground pool. So what is Allah? The fellows that made their uka can pour, and the other members cannot. The Gemara will explain the details of this halach. In any case, let's go back to the beginning of the Mishnah. That if it's a small size chatzar, less than 4 amas, one may not pour water into the chatzar unless he has the uka. Apparently, if the chatzar is 4 amas in size, that allows for pouring. My time, why? Amar Rabba, he explains the background of the halacha. Chacham estimated that on average a person is slated to use 2 sa of personal wastewater. Rabbi Yehuda says for personal washing, for washing dishes. So that's been established by Chachamim as the standard set quantity, average per person per day. So as a result of that, we determined that the size of the chatzar needs to be 4 amas to allow pouring water into the chatzar. Ba'arba amas, if the chatzar is 4 amas in size, a person really wants to use that water, which he's pouring in the chatzar, for the sake of the chatzar. Lazalfan, he wants to spray it to keep the dust down. We're speaking about in the summer. So he'd like to keep the dirt, the dust, the sand down. And he prefers actually that the water remains in the chatzar and not be transported into Rishus Harabim. So in this case, there's no room for concern. That would appear like he's spilling into Rishus Harabim, because he actually wants it to stay here. He prefers that it remains in place. Let's see Rashi inside. 2 lines from the bottom. Gemara. My time. What is the reason? Less than 4 amas is asur. The mashma ha'arba amas shari. So the Gemara's question is referring to the limitation. Less than 4 amas you can't pour. Apparently, if it's 4 amas, then it's okay. Why? The answer is because when the chatzar is 4 amas in size, adam roitzel zalfan. He wants to use the water for ziluf purposes, to keep the dust down. Sheru'uyih lezalif. Because this size chatzar is suitable for ziluf. Laharbetz afara shloyale avoka. He wants to keep the dirt, he wants to keep the dust down. The Gemara later will establish that our mission is speaking about the summertime. Since he wants to use the water for spraying purposes, to keep the dust down, even if it ends up pouring and going out to Rishus Harabim, his intent, his kavanah was not accomplished, not fulfilled. So since he really prefers that it remains here, even if it so happens that as a result of his pouring, the water actually ends up in Rishus Harabim, that's okay. Because let's remember, we're not speaking about an Issa D'Oraisa. The Issa D'Oraisa is to pour directly. When he pours here and it actually flows out, that's only the Rabbanan. We're concerned that this might actually bring a person to pour directly. But that's only when he wants this to happen. But if it's B'loi Kavana, it's not fulfilling his intent, his machshava, it's not what he's trying to do, then the Chachamim, in this case, did not apply any Issa. So if this chatzar is large enough in size, which can absorb those 2 sa, which is deemed as a person's average, the average daily usage of wastewater, then we allow him to pour it into the chatzar because we assume that he wants it to remain here, and there's no maisa of pouring in the Rishus Harabim. Says the Gemara Pachas Medalit. But if it's less than 4 amas in size, Shaifchan, then he's merely pouring it into Rishus Harabim. So then, Ida of it Uka, Shari, if he made this drain, he made this in-ground pool, which is 2 sa in size, then he can pour it, because once again it appears like he's just pouring it into the drain without any intent of proceeding into Rishus Rabbim. Ilo yasser, but without an uka, it's asur. Let's see Rashi inside on the top line. Pachas midald ein rui lezalef. It's not suitable for ziluf. V'shayfchan, and then he's merely like pouring it into Rishus Rabbim. V'chinafki, and if it actually goes out there, mikayim machshavtei. He has fulfilled. His kavan has been fulfilled. What's wrong with that? Because Rabban made a gzera. Dilma asla mishri zirka behedi Rishus Rabbim. If we allow this, and perhaps it will lead a person to actually directly pour something from Rishus Yochid to Rishus Rabbim, which is an Issa Torah. So it's only allowed when there's no intent, such as in the case where it's a large enough chutzner, summertime, he wants to keep the water in the chutzner, or in a case where there's an uka, which also serves as an indication of his true intent, that he really wants his water to be absorbed in this drain and not to proceed further into Rishus Rabbim. Continues the Gemara in the second line. Rav Zera Amar, he gives a different reason for the heter of pouring into a chutzner that is 4 amos in size. Dalad amos, taimi. If you have a large enough area, 4 amos, then the water will be absorbed there. It's a big enough area that has the potential to absorb the share of a person's personal daily water. Pachas midalad amos like taimi. But if it's smaller in size than 4 amos, it's not enough area to properly absorb his water. So in that case, when he pours it, it's inevitably going to be poured into Rishus Rabbim. So the zigzera, if you allow this, perhaps he's going to pour directly into Rishus Rabbim. My benai, is there any difference between Rav Zera's approach of water absorption and Rabba's approach of ziluf? Says the Gemara, Amar Abaye, Orach v'katan yikib benai. The difference will be, let's say we have a chutzner which is long and narrow. So it actually has a surface area of 4 amos by 4 amos, but it's not square, it's a rectangle. It's 2 amos by 8. So according to Reb Zera, that it's the water absorption that allows, then it's irrelevant what type of configuration this chutzner has, as long as it has enough adequate surface area to absorb. Then it doesn't appear like he's standing in Rishus Rabbim. Whereas according to Rabbah, ziluf, keeping the dust down, the Mefarshim explain, only applies to a properly configured chutzner, which is suitable for convenient and respectable use. Shimush kavod. You need to have at least a square 4x4. If it's long and narrow, it's not suitable for this respectable type of use. And in that case, he really has no point, no use to keep the dust down, and the ziluf factor won't apply. So according to Rabbah, it needs to be square 4x4. According to Reb Zera, in any configuration it's okay because it has the potential to absorb a person's daily water usage. Continues the Gemara, Tanan, so we learned in our mission, Chatzer v'achsadra mitzdarfen dal damis. If we have a small size chatzer joined by an achsadra, we'll assume that the achsadra isn't really exactly parallel to the chatzer. It's off to the side, to the corner, in which case, Mishnah tells us, mitzdarfen dal damis. They can both combine to arrive at that total of 4 amos, even though we're not speaking about a square. Bishleim la Reb Zera nicha. So according to Reb Zera, that water absorption is the reason, then it's fine, because even if it's not square, it still can absorb the same amount of water. El Rabba Kasha, according to Rabba, who requires a square, how is he going to explain this Mishnah? Tergum Reb Zera, I'll leave it to Rabba. So Reb Zera interpreted this Mishnah, and according to the Rabba, we're speaking where it's a square. Achsadra maleches, al pnei kol hachatzer kula. This achsadra is actually perfectly parallel to the chatzer, and both together form a 4x4 amos square. Tashma, we have a brayso which says chatzer she'ein bo dalad amos al dalad amos. A chatzer which is not 4 amos by 4 amos square. Or may not pour water into it on Shabbos. This works well according to Rabbah, who requires a square. Elu Reb Zera kasha. However, according to Reb Zera, who's not concerned about shape or configuration, how do you understand this brayso, which seems to require a square? Oh, Malach Reb Zera, Hamani Rabbanani. Says Reb Zera, this brayso follows Rabbanon. Rabbanon? Of course, they're based on this ziluf reason. Umasnis Reb Lezer ben Yaakov. However, the Mishnah, which I was coming to interpret, was following Lezer ben Yaakov's shita. What does he mean? We had a discussion now, Mishnah, regarding pouring into a biv, into this trench, into this drainage pipe. According to the Rabbanan, they didn't allow pouring directly into the pipe. Apparently, Rabbanan's reason for allowance was based on ziluf, because the intent is to keep the dust down. That only applies to the chutzner. When you're pouring water into a trench, there's no intent for ziluf. There's no dust to be kept down in the trench. So that's why you can't pour in the trench, even though there's enough space there to have the water be absorbed. They don't allow it. Apparently, it says Rav Zera, the Rabbanan are working with the concept of ziluf. I agree with that. And therefore, this brisa, which speaks about a square chutzner, is following their shit. Ziluf requires a square usage area. No discussion regarding the Rabbanan. They're working with ziluf. I was referring to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, who allows pouring even directly into a trench. Why? Apparently he's not working with ziluf, he's working with water absorption potential. Therefore he allows pouring into the trench that has that absorption potential before reaching the Shus Rabbim. So according to him, when it comes to pouring into a chutzner, as long as the chutzner area is 4 amos by 4 amos in total, whether square, rectangle, it's irrelevant. You can pour. Let's see Rashi inside. Right off to the left. Homani Rabbanan hi. Rabbanan hold ziluf is the requirement, is the factor. They don't allow due to water absorption. They clearly said, even if you have this long, huge trench running through your chutzner, you can't pour directly into the biv, el al gag, or al chutzner. You have to do it indirectly. Pour it on the roof, and the chutzner and have it trickle into the pipe. Why? Alma time to do mishum ziluf. Apparently, the reason for their allowance is because of ziluf. V'gabi piv, however, when it comes to this trench, migali died to the shafech. It's pretty clear that he's just trying to get rid of the water. The labar zilufu. You don't do ziluf in a trench. So according to them, of course, the ziluf is the factor, and the chutzner needs to be square, in accordance with this brisa. However, v'reisha de masnisin, the initial part of the Mishnah, which I'm coming to explain, is Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. He's working with absorption. Just as when it comes to that trench, he allows to pour into the trench because it has absorption capability. So his reason is because of absorption. So how large does the chutzner need to be to allow pouring in the chutzner? 4 amos. But it doesn't have to be 4 amos by 4 amos square. Even if it's not suitable for zil, that's okay, as long as it has the ability to potentially absorb a person's personal, daily water usage amount, that's okay. Continues the Gemara. But what compelled Reb Zera What forced him to interpret our Mishnah in accordance with Eliezer ben Yaakov's shita? Since he agrees that according to the Rabbanan, ziluf is the allowing factor, and a square chutzner is required, so why did he insist on interpreting our Mishnah in accordance with Eliezer ben Yaakov, that it's water absorption that allows, and then even if it's a rectangle chutzner, it's okay? Why did he prefer Eliezer ben Yaakov over the Rabbanan? Amarava Masnisin Kashise, because the wording of the Mishnah appeared difficult to Reb Zera if he would have learned otherwise. My area detani chutzner shipchusa. Why did the Mishnah use the words chutzner shipchusa b'dal dams? It's less, it's smaller in size, which appears to be referring to the total area of the chutzner. Listening chutzner she'em b'dal damas al dal damas. Why didn't the Mishnah be more? Why wasn't the Mishnah more specific? If the chutzner is less than 4 by 4 square, then you can't pour without the ukkah. Apparently, square is not required. El lav shma mino. Apparently, we're following Reb Eliezer ben Yaakov. Lav shma mino. Apparently, the Reb Eliezer ben Yaakov shma mino. It's pretty clear that the Mishnah here is following Reb Eliezer shita, who speaks about water absorption capabilities. In which case, you don't need to have a square chutzner. Even a rectangular chutzner is okay, as long as it has a proper surface area. Says the Gemara, but since the next part of the Mishnah, speaking about the allowance to pour into the biv, is Reb Eliezer ben Yaakov, doesn't that indicate that Reisha Lav Reb Eliezer ben Yaakov? That the first part of the Mishnah is not his shita? Says the Gemara, no, Kula Reb Eliezer ben Yaakov, the entire Mishnah. From the beginning all the way to the middle is actually the same shita, Rabbi Yehuda Yaakov. And the Mishnah is meant to be learned as though it's missing some words, and learned as follows. Mishnah begins, Chatzer shipchusu midal damis. If the Chatzer is smaller in size than 4 amis, and sheifchen l'seichamayim b'Shabbos, one may not pour water into it on Shabbos. Ha dal damis sheifchen. But if it has the proper size, 4 amis in size, you can pour, even if it's not square, because water absorption is at play here. Sher Rabbi Yehuda Yaakov. Just like Rabbi Yehuda Yaakov says, Biv HaKomer, this trench which is partially covered, Dalad Amas Bishus Rabim, the first 4 amas section running under Bishus Rabim is covered, which allows for water absorption prior to actually exiting into Bishus Rabim. That's okay. One could even pour into the Biv water, because water absorption is what determines. So from the beginning of the Mishnah all the way to the middle is Rabbi Yehuda Yaakov Shita. Rabbi Yehuda Yaakov Biv HaKomer. So that's the Shita, whereas the Chacham hold, no, Ziluf is at play. So pouring directly into a trench cannot be interpreted as Ziluf, therefore that's not allowed. So pour it on the Chatzar and have it trickle into the Biv. Pour it on the rooftop and have it trickle to the Biv. Says the Gemara Masnisin like a Chananya. Our Mishnah which allows pouring on a rooftop is inconsistent with Chananya. The Sanei Chananya Omer, Afilu Gag Mea Amma. Even if you have a large sized roof, 100 amas in size, Lo Yishpech, one shouldn't pour on the rooftop. Why? A rooftop is meant to repel water. It's not meant to absorb. It's meant to have the water roll off. It's waterproof. It's not meant to stay there. So even when you're pouring it on the roof and having trickle into the trench, it appears like you're pouring straight into the trench, which takes it straight to Shus Rabim. Therefore, according to Hananya, just as you can't pour it straight into the trench, don't pour it on the roof either. The only thing you can do is pour it on the Chatzar, and then have it trickle into the trench. So in summary, we learned that a person may pour water into a Chatzar, which is 4 amas in size, or into a Biv, this trench, which has 4 amas of space before it reaches Rishis Rabim. Now, according to Rabbi Yehuda Yaakov, it's based on water absorption. So even if this Chatzar is long and narrow, it's okay. And likewise, you can pour directly into that trench. According to Chachamim, it's based on Ziluf, the fact that he prefers keeping the water in the Chatzar to keep the dust down. That only applies to a Chatzar which is square, which is suitable for Shimush Kavod, and he's particular about the dust. So it has to be at least 4x4 amas in square. They don't allow pouring directly into the trench, which doesn't have this Ziluf element. Rather pour it on the roof or on the Chatzar, and have it trickle down into the bar, into the Biv. According to Chananya, you can only pour it on the Chatzar, but not on the rooftop, which is meant to repel water. And it appears like it's going directly into the trench, which would be problematic. Continues the Gemara. Tana, we learned in the Bryce, getting back to the requirement to have an uka, this drainage pool in the Chatzar. But when is this said? Only during summertime. During wintertime, there's no need to have an uka. You can pour and pour. Doesn't have to withhold. My time of why? During wintertime, he wants the water to remain in place, meaning he has no need for the water to leave his chatzar. In any case, his chatzar is dirty and muddied, so he's not really involved in bringing the water to Rishis Rabim. This won't lead him to pour it directly either. Amalei Abaye. So Abaye said, well, in the absence of this personal preference, it's mutter. What about the case where a person pours the wastewater into the biv, into this trench? There as well, what is his personal intent? The Adam writes it. He wants them to be absorbed in their place, meaning he has no intent to spill this water, pour it into Rishis Rabim. It's a trench. It's meant to hold the water, to absorb water. So he doesn't care about getting it muddied. So there as well, personal intent is absent. Uktani lo yishbech. And still the Rabbanan say, don't pour into that trench directly. So apparently even when this personal intent is absent, it's still asur. Amalei, so Rabba responded, there's a difference. Hasam over there during wintertime, what should be our concern? Look, there were really 2 elements. There's personal intent and then there's public appearance. Both are non-existent during wintertime. Why? Whether it's because he's concerned about ruining his chatzar, making it muddied, and he wants the water to get out. Personal intent, that doesn't exist. During wintertime, his chutzner is ruined, is muddy, so there's no really personal intent. There's no kavanah to get the water out. So that factor is not present. Or perhaps the concern about public appearance. Perhaps people will see the water coming out of his chutzner. They'll say, look, this person's trench is flowing water, shooting water into Rishus Harabim. This may lead to concern of confusion. People will say, well, you can pour something directly into Rishus Harabim as well. So regarding public appearance, that also is non-existent during wintertime. Why? Your typical pipe is flowing with water during wintertime due to the rains. So when they see this pipe flowing water during wintertime, they won't attribute it to him. They'll say it's rainwater. Therefore, Rava says, during wintertime, there's no concern whatsoever. Not on account of public appearance, not on account of his personal intent. So since nobody's involved, and it doesn't even appear like anybody's involved in transferring water to Rishus Harabim, there's no concern that due to this indirect pouring, somebody may come to pour directly. Therefore, there's no concern, there's no need for an ukkah whatsoever. Rav Nachman disagrees. He holds that winter, it mitigates somewhat, but not completely. Even during winter time, an ukkah is required. Amar Rav Nachman, during winter time, you need an ukkah. As follows: ukkah machzik sosayim. If you have a properly sized ukkah, which can contain 2 sa, which is your typical water usage capacity per day, nicely sosayim, then he can go ahead and use it unlimited. Taisus points out that sosayim doesn't mean specifically 2 sa; it's just a way of saying he can go and use it for whatever he needs, because it's a properly sized containment. Machzik sa, however, it's just small in size, can only contain a sa. Nicely sa. In this case, we allow him to use it, but he has to limit his use to a sa within the containment capacity of this pool. That's during winter time. However, where there's more concern, as we mentioned earlier, then machzik sosayim, nicely sosayim. If it can contain 2 sa, which is a properly sized pool, then it can use it unlimited. Sa, however, if it's only small in size, it can only contain a sa, a nice kolika, then he can't use it at all. He doesn't know why. Even during summertime, machzik sa, nesle sa. If it contains a sa, let him use a sa. Gzeira dilma asi litnle sasayim. It's a concern, perhaps this will lead him to use it even for an amount which is greater than sa. He'll use it for 2 sa. So therefore, during summertime, if it's not properly sized, don't use it at all. Says if that's the case, during winter time, there too, let's apply this gzera. Why over there, even when it's small in size, you allow him to use it? Says during winter time, what's the concern? Is it because he intends, he wants the water to leave his chutzner for concern that it might muddy his chutzner? So he's involved in transferring to Rishus Harabim. During winter time, his chutzner in any case is muddied. So he's not involved in transferring water out of his chutzner. So personal interest is non-existent. Is it perhaps due to public appearance? We're concerned, the people will say, look, this person's chutzner, this person's trench is flowing with water into Rishus Harabim. While during winter time, your typical drain is pouring water. It's rainwater, so there's no concern during winter time. However, as Rashi points out, we still prefer that you stick to the capacity of the pool. So if it's 2 sa in size, then you're okay. But if it's smaller than that, l'chatchila, you should only use a sa worth within the capacity of this pool. But to be concerned that if you allow that, perhaps he's going to use more. At worst case, he will. And it's not so terrible, because those concerns that apply during summertime, where it appears like he's trying to transfer to Rishus Harabim, really don't exist during wintertime. So we don't make the gzera. We don't say, well, you can't even use a small size pool within its capacity if concerned that you might use more, because even if you do use more, there's no real concern. However, during summertime, where a person is particular about the cleanliness of his chutzner, and he perhaps wants the water to get out. Number one. Number two, people see water coming out, they'll misinterpret it. as an allowance to transfer directly to Surabim. In that case, you can only use the chatzar if you have a properly sized uka, 2 sa in size, because any smaller than that, we're concerned that he might overuse it and flow into Surabim. That's Rav Nachman's shita. Amar Abaye. Says Abaye, Hilkach, if that's the case during winter time, there is no concerns. I feel a kurayim. You can pour as much as you want, 2 kur of water in your chatzar, even if there's no uka present at all. That's Abaye's shita, that you don't need an uka during winter time. So in summary, one is only allowed to pour water into a small-sized chatzar during summertime if it contains this pit that can hold 2 sa of water, which is a person's personal daily usage amount of wastewater. During wintertime, where a person really doesn't care about the water remaining in his chatzar, which is dirtied and muddied in any case. Number one. Number two, there's no public appearance concern because water is flowing down in any case. So in this case, we are more makel. Rav Nachman says that if the pit, which is required even during wintertime, is 2 sa in size, then you can use it for an unlimited amount. When it's merely a sa in size, then you're limited to a sa of usage, according to Abaye. Due to the fact that those above mentioned concerns don't apply during wintertime, then no uka is required whatsoever. Continues the Gemara. So Mishnah told us if we have balconies which protrude over a chatzar, a small size chatzar, the members of one balcony made an uka on their side of the chatzar, but the other fellows did not. The Mishnah tells us the ones who made the uka can pour into the chatzar, but the other ones can't. Amar Rabba afilu irvu. This is referring to even a case where they made an erev amongst themselves. They can't both use the uka. Amar li Abaye. So Abaye responded, my time, what's wrong? Is it because of the overabundance of water? Too many people using the same pit, which is merely 2 sa in size? That's not a concern. V'atani, we learned in the Brisa. Achasli uka, whether we're speaking about a pit, v'achasli gistra, or broken klicheres, used as a container for wastewater. Brecha, a small-sized pool. V'areva, this large-sized bowl. Afal pishinus malo mayim erev Shabbos. Even if they were actually filled with water from before Shabbos, you can still use it. Sheifchen l'seichen mayim Shabbos. You can continue pouring water into them on Shabbos because as long as it has that containment capacity, it can hold a person's personal daily water usage. So even though now it's filled, you're still pouring into a drain. It doesn't appear like you're pouring into Surabim. Actually, the Mishnah adds that most times these things are presumed to be available for absorption, so it doesn't appear like you're pouring into Surabim. It sends that message. It gives that appearance like you're pouring into a drain, not into Surabim. So in this case, where we only have one uka for members of both balconies, why can't they both use it if they made an erev? Ele itma hachi itma. If we learned Rava's statement, it was as follows: Amar Rava, lo yishanu ele shelo yirvu. The halach in the Mishnah doesn't allow use of this pit by the members of the balcony who hadn't formed a pit. That's only when there was no erev. Aval irvu mutar. But if they made an erev, then they can use it freely. They can pour water into this chatzar without any concern. Says the Gemara, v'chloi irvu, my time eloi. But if there was no erev, why can't they use it? Tosfos explains that even in absence of an erev chatzeres, one can pour indirectly. For instance, they can pour onto their balcony and have it trickle down to the joint chatzar. Because the Chachamim were not so machmer as to prohibit indirect use when it comes to a place that doesn't have an erev. So what's wrong with them pouring onto their balcony, have it trickle down to the chatzar? Amar Rav Ashi. Certainly indirect usage is allowed. That's why the balcony right near the pit can pour to it indirectly. But the balcony situated on the other side of the chatzar at a distance from that pit can't even use it indirectly. Why? Gzeira, there's a concern. Dilma perhaps, asila fuki. They might come carry out mimani debatim lasam, some of their household kalim out of the chatzar over to the pit on the other side. Rather than pour their water on their balcony and have it drip down to the chatzar below, which will get all dirty, they'll prefer perhaps to manually transport their wastewater using their household kalim down to the chatzar over to the pit on the other side, which they can't do because no erev. That's why they don't allow them access to that pit whatsoever. Hadron loch ketzad mishtaz. Okay, time for a brief chazara of today's daf. We learned that a person can draw water from a river up to the balcony, which has a mechitza. Can he pour back into the river and have it flow out? There's a machlokes. Those two balconies, upper and lower, which were situated within 4 tefachim horizontally of each other, and they both constructed the mechitza for the upper balcony, and there was no mechitza for the lower balcony. They can't use the upper balcony without an eruv. When we put water in a chutzner, which is 4 amas in size, onto this biv, this trench, which is 4 amas long, according to Lezer and Yaakov, because the ability to absorb 1 day's worth of water. Therefore, even if the chutzner is long and narrow, it's okay, and you can pour directly into that trench. According to the Chachamim, it's because it appears like he's trying to merely settle the dust down. In that case, the chutzner needs to be at least 4 amas by 4 amas square. Don't pour directly into the trench, rather on the rooftop, or in the chutzner and have it trickle down. According to Hananya, you can't pour it on the rooftop because it appears like it's being deflected directly into the trench. How large is this uka, this drainage pit, meant to be? All agree during summertime it needs to have 2 cell capacity. During winter, where it doesn't appear like he's trying to send his water out of his chutzner, there are some leniencies applied. According to Rav Nachman, even if it's smaller in size, you can use it up to capacity. According to Abaye, during winter time, there's no need whatsoever to make this uka.